Hey everybody, welcome back to the Big Tech Garage. Now today's video is going to be a little bit different because I'm actually going to learn how to do something new today. I'm inviting my good friend Kevin Tetz to come over to the shop to teach me how to get a high quality professional style paint job in a garage, just like this fab shop right here. We're actually painting inside the shop. Now on top of that, I'm going to show you how to get that high quality finish using some of the cheapest paint that I could find on the internet. So essentially this is how to paint your car or your off-road rig for super duper cheap. Now, I've mentioned in the past how I've kind of always hit that brick wall when it comes to doing body work on my projects, but I've kind of been learning the skills to push past that. I feel very confident now in my sheet metal work after completing my 1953 Willys wagon. And I also feel that I'm not a master, but I'm more comfortable doing the filler work, prepping a vehicle for paint after completing my two-door Jeep Gladiator where I had to extend the bed to match the wheelbase of the JK. But I've never really, well, that's a lie. I have painted vehicles in the past. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later, but I know I didn't do it right. So that's what today's video is going to be about. It's how do you get a high quality, professional looking paint job in a place like this, just a regular old garage, using some of the cheapest paint that I could find on the internet. What could go wrong? Nothing. Well, a lot could go wrong, but hopefully Kevin's here to help me not have any big problems. But first, coffee. There we go. Ooh, there's some dirt and stuff in there. The item that we're going to be painting today is this Jeep Gladiator bed. Now this is part of an overland trailer that I just finished building on my TV show, and there's really nothing wrong with the paint on this bed except it's the wrong color. I want this to match my two-door Jeep Gladiator that I painted with Kevin. Well, actually that's a lie. He painted it. I watched him in the past, and so I want it to basically be the exact same color, which is buckskin tan. Now I'll put a link to the paint below, but it is, as I said before, the cheapest paint that I could find on the internet. Now, I don't know a lot about painting, but I know the first thing you want to do is disassemble everything that you don't want to get paint on, and so I'm stripping the bed completely, and then I don't want to paint it on the actual frame. I want to get it off of there so I'm getting overspray on any of the frame, and I also haven't painted the frame yet either. So I'm pulling the bed off, rolling it outside, and I'm gonna spray it down and clean it with my pressure washer, because I also know that step one is always cleaning. So now the bed is up on a set of sawhorses, or saw donkeys as my wife likes to call them for some reason, and now we are ready to change the color of this bed, and that is why I called my good friend Kevin Tetz. I've known Kevin Tetz for years. We worked on the power block together, and we've basically become fast friends. As a matter of fact, when Motor Trend tasked my production company with creating CarCraft TV, I knew Kevin Tetz would be the perfect person to join with John McGann on that series, and they did a killer job on it. Nowadays, Kevin spends a lot of his time making YouTube content, sharing his knowledge of painting cars with people who want to learn how to do it right. And he is possibly one of the smartest people that I have ever met when it comes to automotive collision painting, as well as custom vehicle painting. He's built some amazing cars, and he's always down to share what he knows with other people. So I knew that when I told him that I wanted to paint this bed in my shop, that he would be down with it because he knows that sometimes this is where people got to paint their vehicles. And he thought it would be a fun day spraying paint in my fab shop. Kevin, the whole point here is to make this match my truck.
Yeah.
And so it's black. We have to paint it. What do we got to do?
We have to sand it and paint it, really. If we're trying to make it match the truck, you got the world's least expensive paint package.
I know.
That's 7 years ago in the Arizona sun, and that thing looks like it was painted 2 months ago.
Yeah, still look good.
So this recipe is going to be good. So what we have to do is factory paint, perfect platform to put a paint job on top of.
Okay.
We clean it, scuff it, mask it, and spray it.
All right. And we don't have to remove all this stuff because we're just going to mask it off.
Yeah.
I already took a bunch of stuff off. The only thing we got to paint that you might cheat on a truck is we got to paint this whole panel, not just the edge, right?
Right.
Because we're going to see it.
Yeah, we're going to see it, and I'm going to say it. My collision guys that follow me are going to be mad at me, and it's okay that we mask around some stuff. You don't have to completely disassemble everything every single time. It's fine. That's what they make masking tape for.
And it's a trailer.
And it's a trailer.
Yeah.
So it's going to save us a lot of time. For instance, around the gate.
Okay.
So the tailgate, we got some prep to do on that. But in here, we're going to discreetly mask this off at this body style line. Color wraps around to here. This is already blank with a bed liner. We're just going to take advantage of that, save ourselves some time, especially on the tailgate. We're going to not have to pull the cables off and the pins and the latches and all that stuff. Again, we save about 2 hours on prep.
So we're just going to paint the face of the tailgate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what's the first step before we paint?
First step before we paint is clean. We have to make the paint happy. It's not happy if it's not on a clean surface.
Okay.
It'll stick to anything, but not for very long if it's not prepped properly.
Okay.
So we're going to clean with a organic cleaner, a glass cleaner first, and then we're going to clean with a solvent cleaner, and then we can go nuts with the scuff pads.
All right.
Yep.
Show me the cleaning thing.
Alrighty.
If there's one thing I have learned from Kevin over the years, it is if you plan to paint something, it had better be clean. And also, don't put your greasy mitts on something that you're about to paint. So rubber gloves are your friends here, especially for someone like me who spends the majority of their time elbow deep in axles and transmissions. I think there's just a permanent layer of grease on my hands any given day of the week. So everything gets wiped down first with, believe it or not, glass cleaner. Now, it's just an aerosol glass cleaner. Kevin says it's the best thing to use. And honestly, since we've painted this bed, it's kind of been my go-to thing before I paint anything in the shop, even just with some rattle can. I always hit it with this basically aerosol glass cleaner that I just pick up at the local home store. He said it's great prep. It gets rid of any grease or grime that might be on there, and it doesn't affect the paint. Now, the next step is when you get into some actual body shop chemicals. So this is a prep solvent, is what Kevin told me it was. And this is a much more aggressive cleaner. And this will remove anything that might contaminate the paint. Kevin is super meticulous when it comes to stuff like this, and it's probably why his paint jobs always look so good. He always tells me that, you know, painting is actually the dessert from eating your liver dinner, because nobody likes doing the cleaning, and that's why their paint jobs don't look good. So while I let Kevin start scuffing the bed with the red Scotch-Brite, I started to take the tailgate apart. This was really the only part of the truck that needed to be addressed in any type of sort of body work, and that's because it had some stickers on it. By the time I got the Jeep emblem off of it, there was some damage to the actual tailgate. The tailgate on these Jeeps is also aluminum, so it's pretty thin and it's easy to dent. So I did my best to get rid of all the emblems and the adhesive from the Jeep logo, and then Kevin went in and basically touched up a couple small little dents and feathered out a couple scratches so they wouldn't show up in the finished paint. After everything was cleaned, then the original paint was simply scuffed down with red Scotch-Brite. And as Kevin tells me here, the only goal is to get rid of all of the shiny spots so the paint has something to stick to. Ironically, After doing all that scuffing, then we get to do more cleanings. This is one of the great benefits to knowing Kevin. He knows all these cool things that you can get to do good paint and body. Now, this is basically what looks like a regular old cleaning cloth that we used for the entire build. This is the cloth we used when we wiped this vehicle down with our glass cleaner, same cloth that we used when we wiped it down with the prep solvent. But when you stretch it out, like he was doing previously, it actually causes fibers on the rag to stand up. And that is the rag that you use for your final wipe down before you paint. You simply stretch the rag out, get a blowgun out, wipe everything down. This picks up any and all dust that may have been created during your prep process.
Paint needs adequate airflow. Doesn't have to be a windstorm, but adequate airflow. So we've got our fans here, and we've sealed them with the cardboard boxes. We're going to open up a man door on the other side so we have displacement. That creates a air movement environment that's not crazy aggressive, but gets the overspray away from us so we're not standing in a cloud of noxious gas, and our paint does what it needs to do and gets the solvents pulled off of the top. It's basically a homemade paint booth. All we got to do is make the paint happy.
Okay, so this is the same as the Jeep stuff?
Yes.
And so how do I mix this?
So it typically says on the can, we're in luck, it says on the can here, but if you don't have instructions on the can, go to the internet, Google the part number and the manufacturer with TDS at the back. That's technical data sheet, you'll get all of that stuff. So here we have our mix ratio. Mixing ratio is 4:1, 4 parts paint, 1 part hardener. Super simple.
All right, so 4:1.
4:1.
So
4 parts of this, 1 part of that.
This in here.
Yeah.
And I just go to this spot that says 4:1.
Yep.
And then what do I do?
So right here,
That's one.
depending on the volume that you want, we want a full cup. Yeah. So we're going to go to the top line, which is your last 4 here, and then the next step over, that 4 there. So your 4 parts paint and 1 part hardener.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
that's 1, and that would be another 1.
Yeah.
That's 2, that'd be another 2.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I got the disposable cup in here.
Yep. Yeah, don't put it in there without the cup sliders.
There's a hole in the bottom. All right. Hold on. Once the paint was mixed inside the paint cup to that 4:1 ratio, Kevin pointed out something that I honestly never would have thought of, and that is just because I bought a brand new gun for this job doesn't mean it's ready to use. These paint guns come shipped oiled from the factory to keep them from rusting during shipping. So you need to clean them. And to clean your gun, what you want to use is spray gun cleaner. Now, Seymour Products has a complete line of aerosol spray gun cleaner. So pick yourself up some spray gun cleaner to have in your shop if you're planning to do this. Then it's time to suit up and get ready to paint. I'm using an HVLP gun with a 1.4 millimeter tip. Kevin told me that's what I should use, so that's what I set it up as. Now, the first thing you want to do is check the pattern coming out of your gun. You can see this first spray with just a big old dot with a lot of paint. That's not good. You want a fan pattern or a vertical line basically coming out of the gun. And then what you do is you adjust that vertical line to give you enough paint that will give you good coverage. You don't want it to look like a bunch of spatter on the cardboard. What you want is a good vertical line with good paint coverage, but not a whole bunch of paint running down the side of the cardboard. Technique when it comes to painting is very much part of the game, and Kevin basically talked me through all the different things you need to know. Where to start on your project? How much past the end of the panel do you need to go? How fast do you move the paint gun? How much overlap do you have on every single pass of the paint gun? And if you want to learn how to do this, I can tell you right now, the best thing to do is head over to Kevin's channel and just watch his videos. He is a great teacher when it comes to this stuff, and he talked me through this paint job very, very easily and answered a lot of questions that I had. It was neat to see that we were going to start at the bottom corner of this bed and work our way forward, and then we were going to go to the other back corner and work our way forward again. This first coat, we're not trying to completely change the color of this bed. We just want to lay down a very good initial coat. You can actually kind of still see some of the black coming through this buckskin tan, and that's what we want, because this is just an initial light coat for this single stage paint. Probably the hardest part about this paint job is just all these nooks and crannies that are in this factory bed, and knowing where to put the gun, which way to point it, how do I get the paint up in there without ruining this paint job. But Kevin just pointed out, he's like, hey, just lay the paint down. This is just the first coat. Any problems we can fix later on. After we let that paint dry for a little bit, we went around and just looked at everything. And this is where Kevin showed me how to check to see if you're ready for the second coat by touching the panel where it's going to be covered up. There's a piece of trim that goes here on the bottom of this bed, so we can just touch it and feel it. It's dry to the touch, so it's ready for the second coat. For this second coat, this is where Kevin just let me sink or swim, mixed my own paint, got the gun set up, everything, and just jumped in and started painting. He stood back, watched me, and would comment if he saw me doing something wrong. I'll be honest with you, the second coat was way harder than the first coat, because the first coat I could easily see that I was changing the color of the truck bed, so it was easy to see how much paint I was laying down. This tan on tan, or basically going over the same color, it was very hard to read how much paint I was actually spraying onto the bed. I didn't know if I was putting too much paint on or too little paint on, and I think that just comes with experience. One thing I can tell you, I wish I had more light shining on everything, and so if I was going to do this again, or rather I should say the next time I do it, I'm going to add a bunch of light to the shop before I start spraying. So once we're done painting, guess what time it is? It's time to clean more things. You gotta clean your paint gun as soon as you're done painting. And I mean, like, really clean it. This is where you will disassemble the gun. You'll inspect the little basically holes in this front cap. You want to spray it with some spray gun cleaner. Make sure all of the solvent is out of there and make sure it's good and clean. You also want to disassemble the gun. You want to take apart, there's basically a needle and seat inside that gun, and that's what basically sets the paint out. So you want to disassemble that part of the gun. Make sure that all the paint is off both the needle and the seat. Essentially here, you're just cleaning out all the paint from inside of the gun so it's ready to use next time. Once we were done painting, it was awesome to just look at this bed, see the transformation that it's made. It looks perfect. Is it a perfect paint job? Absolutely not. But does it look good to me? It absolutely does. And I think that just like everything else, the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. So if there's one piece of advice I can give you from me learning how to paint today, it is don't be afraid to just jump in and tackle a job like this yourself. Worst case scenario, you got to sand all the paint off and do it again. For this episode of Story Time, I'm going to tell you about the first time I ever painted a vehicle and why I probably haven't painted a vehicle since then. So I was probably about 19, maybe 20 years old. I was young, basically still a teenager essentially. And I had a 1979 square body Chevrolet two-wheel drive, slammed down on the ground. It was going to be like my shop truck. And I needed it blue. I wanted it blue. It was two different colors. The bed was black and the cab was blue. I wanted the whole truck blue. So I went to the parts store and I bought some paint, single stage blue paint. I bought some reducer and some hardener and some fisheye remover because I didn't want fish eyes. I have no idea what that does, but I bought it anyway. And the guy at the parts store said, you know how all this stuff works? And of course, being basically a teenager at the time, I didn't ask. I said, sure, of course I know how all this works. So easy peasy. You got to remember, this is like before the internet was actually a thing where you could get information from. So really, I didn't know where to look to get information. I didn't have any friends that were painters or body men. All I knew was a few things that I'd heard some people talk about in my car club that I was part of. And instead of asking them, I just assumed that I could figure it out. I knew that they would bake cars when they painted them. And that's all I knew about a paint booth. So I thought a paint booth was essentially a room that you had to get really hot to paint in. So I took the small garage behind my parents' house. It was 16 by 40 feet. And I sealed it up good. And then I wet the floor down because I'd heard someone talk about doing that. So I hosed the floor all down with a hose, make sure it was good and wet. I got one of those propane heaters and I got that place hot, like boiling hot. Mixed up the paint, put on a dust mask, not a respirator, dust mask from the hardware store for Canadian Tire, for those of you in Canada. And went in there and started painting. And it was going great. The truck was going from blackish to bluish. But something weird was happening because my eyes started to stick closed. And then when I looked up to look across the garage, it was only 16 feet wide, so it really wasn't that big of a space. I couldn't see the other wall just from the fog of blue paint that was hanging in the air. So I went over to the big garage door. My friend was outside. I banged on it and I told him to open the door. And he said, you're gonna let all the heat out. And I said, yeah, that's fine. The truck's blue. We're done. I just got to get out of this garage. So we opened the garage door. And he said when he opened it, a cloud of blue paint just rolled out. And I was standing there. And not only was the truck blue, every horizontal surface in that shop was blue. And I was essentially blue. My eyebrows were blue, my hair was blue, my nostrils were blue, my hands were blue, all my clothes were blue, everything. And I was essentially high as a kite and quite excited that my truck was blue. And because of that experience, and the paint job was horrible because essentially what happened was all that overspray had hung in the air because it didn't go anywhere. And it just settled on top of the truck. So I had at the time what now we would call like a Line X paint job because it was this rough blue finish, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted a shiny blue paint job, but instead I got this rough blue paint job. But the truck was blue, so it was okay. So that's kind of why I haven't painted a truck ever since. I knew that if I was ever gonna paint something again, I should probably learn how to do it. That's kind of been what I've learned in my life as I've grown older because I'm old, is back then my younger Ian, he was very much a learn by doing. And now I think it's better to learn by maybe asking people who know what they're doing. So that's why I invited Kevin over to my shop to paint this trailer. And I didn't want him to paint it. I wanted him to teach me how to paint it. Because even though I'm in my 50s, I'm still building cars. I want to do the whole thing. I want to build the car, start to finish, including all the bodywork, all the metalwork, and the paintwork. That's going to be my final sort of like, I did it all. And I knew in order to get to that space, I needed to learn how to paint. And I knew that Kevin was going to be the guy that taught me. So now that the trailer's been painted and that I have learned how to do it correctly from Kevin, I know that in the future, I'll be more confident in doing my own paint job. And I will be safe and it will be done correctly. And even in an environment like this shop, I can make it so the paint works correctly and I'm not going to seal myself in the shop and turn everything blue ever again. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Story Time. Let's get back to the trailer. So now the bed has been painted, reassembled, and put back on the trailer. But I need to do one more thing to finish out this trailer build, and that is build some type of a bed rack. Now, the reason that I want a bed rack is because this isn't just a trailer. This is essentially going to be my overland vehicle trailer that I use whenever I need to go on a trip. So if I need to be able to camp, instead of putting a tent or a rooftop tent on the vehicle I'm going to take, I'm going to hook this trailer up and take it whenever I need to go. So for that, I want to have a bed rack so I can have the rooftop tent high enough up, because it's also going to have an awning. And to figure all that out, first step is to unbox my new rooftop tent. This tent and awning that I'm using is from 23-0, and it's a big tent and a big awning. It's actually designed to fit on the back of essentially full-size pickup trucks. But since this Gladiator bed is now part of this trailer, I have a lot more real estate to work with. I just have to build a custom rack to make it all work. Now, the entire rack is going to be built out of some 1x3 100-wall steel tubing, and I need to set the height high enough so that when it's parked, the awning will basically just deploy and you don't have that low ceiling feeling when it's all set up. That's one of the nice things about having this fab table, is I can essentially build this whole setup right here on the fab table, and I know it will fit onto the bed of the Gladiator when it's all done. Now, I said before, this is a big tent. It's also a heavy tent. This is not something that you just throw up there all by yourself. So what I actually had to do was use my engine crane to essentially slide this entire hard shell tent over top of my new roof rack and then get it into position. I tried to lift it myself, and that was not gonna happen. So I don't think I necessarily need this bar that I just added, but this is an off-road trailer, so I think any additional support I can give to this tent would be beneficial. It's a little bit longer than the bed, so by adding this bar that comes down to the spare tire mount, it does a couple things. Strengthens up the spare tire mount, because now this upright is attached into the frame of the tent. The tent is now mounted onto our roof rack, and then this just gives us a little bit of additional support. One thing that I did have to pay attention to when I made this was I had to make sure that I could still get into our front cooler. So before I welded it in, I made sure that the lid opened, which it did. So this is perfect right now. You can easily get to everything inside our incredibly large cooler that's on the front of this trailer, and at the same time, everything is mounted and safe in place. So now I'm gonna mount the 23-0 awning. I just gotta decide which side. I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. Added benefit to using products from one manufacturer, in this case 23-0, is they're designed to work together. The tent has an integrated, basically extruded aluminum channel that they sell brackets for, so the awning essentially bolts onto the tent. I didn't need to add another bracket to my bed rack to hold the awning, I simply bolted the brackets onto the tent, and then the awning will bolt onto those. So at this point in time, the trailer is fully assembled, and the next step would be to build a custom wiring harness and wire this thing all together. Now, the nice thing is, because this is a Gladiator bed, I can use things like just some aftermarket Gladiator taillights and wire them in. The whole thing's gonna work off of this 7-pin junction box I'm gonna mount up front, and that will be what plugs into the Jeep. The only thing that I'm actually gonna be doing on this Jeep that's a little bit different is the onboard power. Instead of mounting a bunch of batteries in this trailer, I'm actually going to use a standalone power station. Now, the nice thing about using one of these portable power stations is the first word in that, portable. It doesn't have to live in the trailer. I can simply pull this out and use it wherever I want. I can use it around the campsite, or I can use it at my house if the power goes out, or anywhere I need power. I simply carry this to it, set it down, and I've got power. Now, keeping this charged usually means you either plug it into the wall and charge it up before you go, or it does have a 12-volt input that you can use to charge it from your vehicle. But instead, I'm going to use the new Bluetti Charger 2. Now, the Charger 2 essentially is a DC to DC charger and another power distribution hub. So what this is going to do is it's going to hook directly up to my Jeep's battery, as well as my Jeep's alternator. It also has an input for a solar panel. And then using all three of those power sources, it will charge this power station 13 times faster than the standard DC plug in the front. The other nice thing is that it's another distribution hub, so I can hardwire things in, like my fridge, like my lights, everything that I have inside the trailer, and then it's simply one cord coming from my power station going down to the Charger 2, and then the trailer runs by itself. There's another benefit here though. Considering the fact that this is hooked up to the Jeep's battery, if the Jeep's battery was to ever go dead, I can use the battery from the power station to act as a booster and essentially start the vehicle. I can also use it to trickle charge the battery, because the Charger 2 will monitor all those things. If the solar panels are hooked up, it'll charge this battery, it'll charge my Jeep's battery, and it'll keep everything running perfectly. I think this is a great option for an adventure trailer, because it gives you everything that you need when you're off grid, but also gives you the portability of using it back home if you need to. Wiring up the Charger 2 is very easy because it comes with pretty much all the wires you need to make it work. The power wires that will go to the vehicle's battery, as well as some additional wires to hook up to the solar panels and to the actual power station. I'm going to mount the Charger 2 inside this tongue box just to keep it out of the weather, good and safe. And then I will drop my power station inside the tongue box when I'm traveling, but I'll be able to pull it out when we get to the campsite. Once everything is wired up and hooked up, it's easy to see in the app how the vehicle is now charging the battery. Now at this point, this video is getting a little bit long, and really the whole point of this video is to talk about painting this trailer and then finish assembling it. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take the wiring portion of this video and I'm going to save it for another video later on, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to cover and a lot of stuff that it's going to be pretty specific to wiring up something like this adventure trailer, and I don't want to shortchange you guys on that. So look for that video coming out soon on this trailer right here. So for now, we're going to call this thing done. I absolutely love the color of this paint. It matches my two-door Gladiator perfect. I can't wait to take it out on an adventure, and I got a pretty big one planned later on this summer that you guys will see as well. But until then, thanks again for sticking around and checking out the Big Tech Garage, and we'll see you next time.